Welcome to the Warley Model Railway Club virtual event, featuring club life, the exhibition and the exhibitors. We hope you enjoy this presentation.
My name is Carol Flavin and I'm a railway modeller. At home I have a layout that is called Edghay and Strines Railway. But during 2020, I was going to go out to demonstrations at exhibitions taking this waterfall diorama. Because that hasn't happened, I've made some videos. The first is about cliffs. Hello, my name's Carol Flavin. Some of you may recognise me as the team leader of the Loco Ladies, and we were the first female team to enter the Great Model Railway Challenge. We particularly were noted for our scenics. We had some rather spectacular cliffs with some crochet trees on the top, which attracted rather a lot of interest. After we were at Warley and showed our layout there, we were asked to go out to some demonstrations and take some items with us. So I made a diorama, which you've seen some photographs of already, of a crashing waterfall in some cliffs with a pool at the base. I have built one in a piece of countryside that's largely based around Yorkshire, which is where I live. It's certainly got the look of Yorkshire. There is a big pool at the base. There's big splashy waterfalls that run from a river at the top that goes underneath a rather nice stone bridge. And then there is a small area of countryside and trees and a variety of people who are looking and are sort of using the countryside. I'm now using the diorama on my own layout rather than taking it out to exhibitions. And I was taking lots of videos to show my grandchildren how I'd been making it when I realised there was a possibility that this might prove of interest to other people. So I realised I needed to make three. One of the cliffs and how I structured the cliffs, the second about the pool at the base, and the third about the waterfalls themselves. This is the first, and it's the one about the cliffs. I use insulating foam to make cliffs with, and I buy it in DIY stores. On the first level, I draw out a rough shape of what I want, cut it out using a very sharp knife. I take off all the silver and I build up the layers using Mod Podge glue or a similar type of glue. And I've also cut some little rocks out. The foam rocks that I carved out of scraps are now being stuck on using Mod Podge, starting at the bottom, working my way up. And once you've left them for probably 8 to 12 hours, they're absolutely rock solid, ready for the next stage, which is using the toilet paper. What you can see here are the layers of the cliff that I've built up using the different layers of foam insulation. On the right-hand side is the first layer of toilet paper that I've stuck down, and I'm going to show you how I do it. But what I've also showing is how the foam, as you cut it and as you create it, gives a fairly craggy look to start with, but it does leave lines. So what the toilet paper does is disguise the lines. If there's a gap that's far too big, then I tend to use a bit of filler or even a bit of the toilet paper rolled up to fill the gap. What I do then is I cover the surface with a glue. Now I like Mod Podge because I'm not allergic to it, it doesn't make me cough, and I quite like the smell of it. But I have used Speed Bond, I've also used PVA. They will all work perfectly well. You cover it with a layer of the glue, and once you've done that, you take your piece of toilet paper. In this case, I've used 2 pieces of toilet paper. You don't need a huge amount. And you lay it on the top. It doesn't matter to start with whether or not it merges, and it also doesn't matter that this particular toilet paper is one that has a pattern embedded in the surface. Because what you do is you squeeze the toilet paper into place to give that craggy effect that you want. You can see the join, but that will disappear because I will now be thinking in terms of using a layer of glue that will cover it. I'm now using the brush to put a layer of glue on the top of the toilet paper I've just put in place. Making it fairly wet with this particular glue will allow me to manipulate the toilet paper into the shape that I want. It will also allow me to slightly blend that join across so that you don't see it on the finished article. And when it's dry, it will become very solid and hard, and it will allow me then to use various paints on it without spoiling it or making it soggy to get the effect that I want when I use the paints. And the first stage is to cover the whole thing with grey acrylic paint. I've covered the whole rock face with the toilet paper now, and it's dry, and I've covered it with grey paint. I'm now about to put a wash on it. Now this wash is designed to pick out the crevices and make it look like a real rock face. It's a mixture of grey, black and blue and green, and I just put it on quite wet with a brush and leave it to dry. Once I'd finished using the wash on the surfaces, I picked out the main areas that were more prominent with buff titanium and white, put a darker paint, which was a mix of indigo, black and grey, into all of the crevices, and I even flicked some of it onto the prominent areas of the rock faces. Then I stuck scatter on all of the flat surfaces where you would normally find grasses. And I did a mixed scatter, which made it look like moorland. I finished off the layout, or the model, or the diorama, whatever you want to call it, with a rather nice little plaster bridge that I've had for a while, which I stuck into place with filler and a bit of toilet paper, ready for me to paint it to match. This is the bridge after I'd weathered it, put people on it, put a tractor on it, and generally made it look as if it's been there for years. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video and that the hints and the tips and the information that I've given you in it will be useful when you come to build the scenics on your own layout, possibly in a different way to the way that you thought you might want to do them. Thank you for watching this How I Did It video, and I do hope that the hints, tips and information contained in it have given you some new ideas for your own scenic model railway making. If that's the case, do please share it, like it, or tell anybody else about it that might be interested. Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye. My name is Carol Flavin and I'm a railway modeller, and at home I have a layout that is called Edghay and Strines Railway. In 2020, I was going to take this waterfall diorama out to exhibitions at demonstrations. Because they got cancelled, I made a How I Did It video. This one is the second of 3, and it's about the pond and the river. Hello, my name's Carol Flavin. You may know me or recognise me as being the team leader of the Loco Ladies, and we were the first female team to enter the Great Model Railway Challenge. I had wanted to make a big crashing waterfall on the layout, but there was never time, so I decided to make one for myself in the form of a diorama. I decided to do some cliffs, a crashing waterfall, and also a pool at the base with flowing river. I took the diorama to Doncaster in February 2020 as a demonstration. That was the last time we went out to a model railway exhibition because, as you know, we got locked down. Because I have a big layout at home and I'm doing a lot of work on it, I decided to use this diorama in my own layout. This is the second video. This is all about how I made the pool at the base with the flowing water, and I hope you find it interesting and you get some useful information from it. And I'm going to show you how I did it now. These are the cliffs that I made in the first part of a set of 3 videos on hints, tips and information about how to make a waterfall diorama. This is where I start to make the pool. This is the water area, which I seal into place with either filler or bits of toilet paper. I then build up layers of toilet paper to create a solid base. And once that's dry, I'm ready to move on. Next stage is to paint the whole model in grey acrylic paint. And because I'm a visual person, I paint the water where the waterfalls are going in, just with some paint to highlight it. And then I make it shiny, because it would be splashed water, by putting some varnish on it. To make the pool look as realistic as possible, I carved out some runoffs on the edge, filled it to make it look as realistic and as solid as possible, and started to do the painting. Now I used a selection of colours here. There's turquoise in there, there is emerald green, there's indigo, there's Payne's grey, there's a small amount of black, and there is some white. And I kept building up the layers to try and get the feeling of movement, using my brush to create that movement until I was moderately happy. I then used a small brush to dab white at the base of the waterfalls, and I decided I needed to put some rocks in. So I carved the rocks out of the foam that I made the cliff faces with, painted them grey, touched them up and highlighted them until they looked like real rocks. And then I spent a bit of time placing them on the layout, putting little bits of scatter and gravel on top of them, and also into the base of the pool, so that in the same way that you would have rocks. Once I was happy with the base, I put white all over it. The white being heavy structure gel, and the idea of the white heavy structure gel is to give a real feel of movement. Now it doesn't stay white, it dries clear. It does take a while, but it is worth waiting. I apply this, put it on using spatulas. There's a pointed one and a rounded ended one there, and I move it across the heavy structure gel until I'm happy that the water looked as if it was flowing over the rocks. It probably took 24 hours to get to this stage where the heavy structure gel is nearly dry, and the white bits that are left there are useful to highlight where I want to put currants. So what I've done is started to use white paint. Now I'm at the stage now where I've actually put the water in for the waterfalls, because then I could make the water flow away from the waterfalls as if it was realistic. And I use a very lightweight brush, a small amount of white paint, and I pick out where the water is flowing. Down the sides, down the middle, dropping into those runoffs that I made earlier on. At the base of the waterfalls, there is some splash, as you'd get from a waterfall that's falling from quite a height. I used a fibre that gave it a soft effect of water landing, and I shall show you that in the 3rd video. And I've also highlighted to give depth, because I realised it had got a bit shallow looking because I've been painting a lot of currants in it. So I used black, indigo, a small amount of grey, and I painted quite a lot of depth around the waterfalls themselves, and a little bit more in the actual rocks and where the water falls off. And I put some reeds on as well. This is the top of the diorama under the bridge where the river comes in from outside, and I used exactly the same effects and techniques to create this. I used my paint initially to create the movement, and then I replicated that using the heavy structure gel. And once that was dry, I picked out the waves and the movement and the top of the waterfall with dabs of white paint to make it look really realistic. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and that the hints and the tips and the information that I've given you in it will be useful when you come to build the scenics on your own layout, possibly in a different way to the way that you thought you might want to do them. Thank you for watching this How I Did It video, and I do hope that the hints, tips and information contained in it have given you some new ideas for your own scenic model railway making. If that's the case, do please share it, like it, or tell anybody else about it that might be interested. Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye. My name is Carol Flavin and I'm a railway modeller. I have a railway at home that is called Edghay and Strines Railway. And in 2020, I was going to go out with this waterfall diorama and do demonstrations at exhibitions. But when they were cancelled, I decided to make some How I Did It videos. This is the third, and it is about how I made the waterfalls for it. Hello, my name's Carol Flavin. You may remember me. I was the team leader of the Loco Ladies, the first female team to take part in the Great Model Railway Challenge. We were invited to take our layout to the Warley exhibition at the NEC in 2019. So we were going to be doing demonstrations in 2020 of certain techniques that we'd used. Trouble is, of course, 2020, year of the lockdown, what we found was that we didn't go out and weren't going to be able to go out to the model railway exhibitions. So I had in the meantime made a diorama, and that diorama was a rock face crashing waterfall with a pool at the base. So I've used that on my own layout now. I decided to make 3 videos on hints and tips and information about how I made it. The first was about the cliffs, the second about the pool at the base. This is the third part, and this is about how I made the crashing splashy waterfalls. I hope you find it interesting, and I'm going to show you now how I went about making them. I painted the outline of where the water was going to fall down the face of the waterfall and the cliffs, and then I painted the cliffs with shiny varnish because water splashes and makes them look shiny. I then used a flat brush to paint white dots to show where the fall of the waterfall was going to be at the base where the pool is. I'm using the heavy structure gel that I used to make the waves and the movement in the pool in video 2, and I've been putting pieces on the ledges as it goes up the waterfall, because as the water splashes down there needs to be some evidence and some movement. At the base I've got a piece of plastic which I'm slotting into place to push the last bit of the waterfall away from the wall to give a more natural look of the water falling into the pool. I use crystal clear silicone to make my waterfalls. I've used a silicone gun, and because these are the smaller waterfalls, I've done 2 lots of 3 runs of silicone. And then what I do is I use a spatula, a pointed spatula, to push the rows together. And if you look closely, you can see that already they're beginning to get a feel of flow and movement. What I then do is do it all the way down both of them, and I leave them to dry. The idea being that once they are dry, or very nearly dry, I can move on to the next stage, which is painting them to look like real water. I use white acrylic and a small brush to paint a chevron shape down the waterfall to give a feeling of flow and movement to it. And the other thing that you also need is some splash. Where the water lands, anywhere where water lands, you will find that there is a splashy area. It's called spume. And I use an old Christmas fleece. You can use lots of other fibres, and you can buy some specially for this. But what you do is, what I do is I tease a small bit away from the Christmas fleece, ready to use. I'm now at the point where I'm going to make the waterfall look more realistic. So I'm back using the heavy duty structure gel, and I've put a layer of it on top of the waterfall that I'd created so far with the chevron shape on it. And I've laid a piece of the fleece, the pulled out fleece on it, and I use some more of the structure gel to push it into place, either with my finger, but it's a bit messy, or with a spatula. It's a bit ephemeral actually, and it's a tricky stage, but it is the bit that makes it all look as realistic as you can possibly make it. This is a piece of the waterfall that I made earlier, which I wanted to show you. I couldn't find any other bits, and this had been in the bin, so it's actually slightly dirty. But that doesn't really matter. I just wanted you to get a feel for what it looks like. Once it's dry, it's very flexible, which makes it an extremely useful product to work with. Once I've finished creating the waterfalls, I put them in place, and if they're still tacky, they will actually stay where I want them to be. But if I need to, I put glue behind them to hold them in place. I use the heavy structure gel at the base and at the top to make a seamless join, and also to create the feeling of movement of it flowing over the edges and down at the base. And having done that, I take some more of that fleece, tease it out, and place it so that it looks as if there's a splash on the waterfalls. This is a short clip of the completed diorama. I had wanted to make something a bit like this when we did our layout for the Great Model Railway Challenge, but we didn't have the time. So I made this diorama to take out, along with some of the other Loco Ladies and some of the things that they have made, to do demonstrations at various model railway shows. Of course, it became 2020 and the lockdown. Most of the shows were cancelled. So I made the decision that I would use this diorama on my own layout instead. And I've been very, very happy that I have done. I thought I'd show you the diorama set in my own layout so you've got an idea of how I'm going to use it. There's going to be a big pool at the base, a beach, lots and lots of cliffs, another big crashing waterfall, houses, buildings, all sorts, but they are quite a long way off being finished and completed. But that's what I enjoy doing. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video and that the hints and the tips and the information that I've given you in it will be useful when you come to build the scenics on your own layout, possibly in a different way to the way that you thought you might want to do them. Thank you for watching this How I Did It video, and I do hope that the hints, tips and information contained in it have given you some new ideas for your own scenic model railway making. If that's the case, do please share it, like it, or tell anybody else about it that might be interested. Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Welcome to 10 Commandments, with over 1,200 products in stock covering wagon loads of every kind, line-side accessories for the discerning modeler, foam-lined storage boxes, hand-painted animals, rolling roads and track-cleaning wagons and much more, and stockists for the Building a Model Railway series. Visit our website today at www.10commandmentsmodels.co.uk.
Thank you for watching this Warley virtual event presentation. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe. We hope to see you when we are back at the NEC on the 27th and 28th of November 2021.